All right, so a couple of smaller news that happened over the last week. These don't warrant their full story, but we should mention them. Hype token breaks out. I keep looking for a breakout crypto token, and Hype from I think they're called the Hyperion network, jumped up 21% this week, with traders and analysts eyeing more upside as speculative altcoins sentiments gain strength. Netflix surprises the street. Netflix crushed earnings after adding a record 19 million subscribers in Q4, pushing its total over 300 million. The stock jumped 10% as revenue hit 10.25 billion, and full year guidance beat expectations. Mike, do you remember a couple of years ago, actually during COVID, where Netflix was plummeting because they wanted to raise prices, stop people from sharing passwords,
Mhm.
and Hulu and Disney Plus and all these competitors were coming out at the same time? Do you remember that stock just plummeting?
I do. It was actually an entry zone for me. I remember getting in around 170 something a share, and it was a perfect trade. And I didn't hold it long enough, but I did hold it for about a year and a half or so from that low.
Nice. Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised that Netflix is coming out of that hole because um, I swore to myself I wouldn't use Netflix again, and then here I am like a chump paying for Netflix month after month after month.
No, it was definitely a good play, and Netflix has continued to impress for sure, especially from an earnings perspective.
Cool. Crypto bill signed into law. So Trump officially signed a bill repealing the IRS DeFi broker rule. Have you heard about this? The idea that the requirements for platforms, decentralized platforms, to provide like KYC
Hmm.
has been diminished or all but removed in some locations.
Yep.
I find this to be super. I mean, I like deregulation in theory. I like deregulation. Um, but that he would pick this like, okay, let's just remove the requirements for KYC under these circumstances for DeFi platforms to allow more degenerate gambling. I go, this is on brand. This is on brand for the administration, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised that this and maybe many more of these things are going to happen. And to me, it's like, is this bullish crypto? That's like what I'm wondering about. Is will
Mm.
people be like, oh, the casino doors are open. Let me just go back in and put some more? Or people like burnt by Solana and the pump dot fun stuff and burnt by the Ethereum alts that are just like dying on the vine because of how Ethereum is falling. Is this for you bullish that they would deregulate the crypto space?
Definitely bullish for those who like to trade alts because I think some of that activity shows up on dexes in droves that will still hit some of the tokens that are traded on centralized exchanges. So sure, I definitely would want to keep an eye on alts as a result.
Interesting. Well, that was way more quiet announcement than
Yeah,
well, because of the world was fallen. We're in liberation. I don't call it liberation day anymore. I call it liberation year,
sure.
because I feel so liberated from stability and expectation and stuff like that.
Stable markets, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Florida bets on Bitcoin. Florida passed a bill to allocate 1.5 billion in state funds towards Bitcoin reserves. What is happening? The Bitcoin people are right. I don't like saying that. I don't want the Bitcoin people to be right. They're sort of like a-holes, the maxis. But the move puts Florida at the forefront of U.S. crypto adoption at the state level, sparking praise and backlash alike. So I like the idea that a bunch of states will start putting crypto inside of their as a reserve asset. I don't know what that means for the price of Bitcoin, but I was very surprised to see that happen. And then finally,
Was there
discount
was
retail.
there
Sorry,
any
go ahead.
indication on how much Bitcoin Florida currently holds? I know New Hampshire had a similar bill that they put forth. I'm just kind of curious. Like, the bill says that only 10% of certain state funds can actually be used to purchase Bitcoin. I'm just kind of curious where they're at right now on a percentage basis or even notional basis.
I don't know.
But that's definitely bullish, and it was a unanimous vote. So Florida is clearly very pro crypto. Love to see that.
I see. Well, let's see. Let's see. Let's see. All right. So the final point there is discount retailers outperform. While broader market sell-offs happen, budget-friendly chains like Walmart, BJ's, and Dollar General held firm. Um, Analysts say investors are rotating into value plays as shoppers tighten their belts. This, folks, is another sign of weakness within the system. When you have consumer staples or lower cost assets that go up during bad news, it's a warning sign for recession, or at least the market is preparing for recession. So that was pretty interesting.
Agreed. However, the ratio between value and growth is usually pretty damn short lived. If I can show my screen here, this is just comparing the value fund from State Street relative to the growth fund on State Street, and you can see that there was a period of time where value definitely was beating growth for a sustained period of time between early 2000s and 2008. But since that point, this has been like one of those decaying relationships that just gets worse and worse over time. And sure, you see these little spikes occasionally where values seems to be accelerating against growth, but then growth always ends up winning. Today is a very interesting candle in terms of this relationship because it's just showing value selling off relative to growth and things rotating back into the mega caps again.
Yeah, this is. I mean, one of these days we're gonna have to do a segment on the passive investment flows, which basically make it that if the unemployment rate doesn't like go up significantly,
Mhm.
there's just uh, these flows that are just coming into the market automatically, and then the whole thing that we jam on about Kim Carson, that the
Yep.
options are actually what move the market,
What moved
and
the
as
market
long as that gamma is positive, forget it.
for sure.
Yeah, value outperforming there. You'll get spikes, like you'll get these. You've shown me these like crypto level pumps in some assets. I don't know how you find them. Just unbelievable. Up 400%, up 500%. Oh my God.
Yep.
But if you're waiting for those inside of like non index plays, unless you have a system like you do, like you're not really going to be sitting on finding it. I find
It's
that's
tough to
just too
find.
difficult.
Definitely tough to find, and value in general is definitely a tough one to really sustain over the long run. Growth just moves. Growth companies obviously move in price. Just look at what we just saw on Nvidia moving 30% inside of a week.
That's right.
That's insane. So
Actually, before I leave off, just to say there, we didn't even touch on the AI stuff. Can you believe we talked the whole show? We didn't say AI once. It's been crazy.
we did now.
Um,
Now we got the buzzword checkbox.
right. But that's been one of the that to me is like one of the, what do you call it? I call them Frodo events. Like when there's this thing happening in the background that ends up throwing the ring into the fire, then everything blows up. We can't measure the productivity that's going on right now with AI development, and so it makes me think like we that's like uh, a spanner in the works, that all the plans, all the models that we have of what recession will look like, and what a depression might look like, and what the next 10 years might look like, it's totally up out of the window. But
Fair point.
yeah,
We'll
that'll
see as
wrap
earnings
that.
season starts to roll around again.
Yes, earnings seasons. God, my list. You're right. I had earnings season on my list. I didn't even mention that. That's like the next 3 months,
Mhm.
because there are CEOs who are not reporting. They're not doing guidance. Some of them are not even doing earnings reports, or not, or like the investor calls,
Mhm.
because they're saying, we don't know what's gonna happen. We don't know what's going on with the tariffs. We're not going to give any information right now. Which to me is like, I've never heard of that. Like even during COVID, they were given some
Some guidance.
feedback.
Yeah, yeah. It's rare to see that guidance gets pulled back or delayed, unless they're really trying to hide something, which is never promising.
Never
Um,
good.
I will say this. Maybe this is a story for next week as well. We have the 13F filings coming out this week, and by next, I guess that would be Tuesday, the filings have to be completed. It's actually within a 45-day window. So between the 15th and the 30th of April. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on what the bigger institutional super investors are buying over this last quarter. That to me is kind of one of the bigger signals as to whether we're rotating into small caps, rotating into value. The real question is, what are those guys buying? Because they tend to be leading the market. I know, interestingly, another headline was Warren Buffett being up, I think, 13.5 billion in overall value personally, while the rest of the major super investors were all down, hundreds of billions. And in the case of like Elon Musk being down 150 billion or so. So Warren Buffett wins again, and so I want to see what he bought in the first quarter as well. So that'll be something we can bring up over these next couple of weeks.
Wow, I didn't even know that. That's amazing. Does the 13 of violence also tell you if they have cash on the sidelines? if they haven't
Yeah,
invested in
you
it?
can usually gather their total positions, including cash. The 13 of filing itself is only to report changes in your securities, so anything you sold or bought. But cash can usually be gleaned by looking at the quarterly reports for Berkshire Hathaway. They tell you what they're sitting on in cash.
Got it. Okay, perfect.